we start sitting down. But you see it, and I think now this is the first, at least Seneca election that we've had where people are starting to recognize and talk that way. So I encourage that way, because even like the raids, you know, things are going on. You have Dickey and these guys from ATF and agencies, and people are making their pleas to him. That's not our diplomacy. That's not our diplomacy.
And it should be over his head.
Yes.
You know, that's above his pay grade to be you know, trying to negotiate any kind of terms on our territory.
Sure.
And, you know, and I think the raids do give a symbol of just how aggressive the federal government has been on our territories, and not just here in Cattaraugus, but in Tonawanda and other places. You know, and I've said this before, we've never seen this level of federal aggression on our territories, at least not in our lifetime. We've had knockdown dragouts with the state, but we've never had the federal government trying to do so much.
I want to say something, and I believe it's related. I could be wrong. Is that, like you said earlier, I've never seen as much institutionalization in the Seneca Nation before, where we're going back to the state and the federal government and agencies and saying, look, leave us alone, because we parroted your system. And that's the thing I think that a lot of people are, we're starting to see it as a weakness. Some of us have seen it from a weakness from the beginning, but now more and more people are starting to wake up to it and saying all we are is kind of bringing their system that fails for them time and time and time again. And we try to parrot it.
No, and I know that we've had this this conversation a number of times about when we speak of these things, and we offer that there may be that somehow we've got to take a step back, and maybe we've got to consider a little bit more of who we are as Haudenosaunee, as Seneca, Onondaga, Gunyakahaga. Oftentimes what we get, and Matt, you get the same thing back to you, is that, well, you guys are a little bit idealistic. You're not really understanding the complexities of dealing with the federal government. You're not really understanding just what and I'm sorry, but I understand the complexities. In fact, I may understand them a little bit more better than some of the rest of you guys in the room. I've been at various levels of the federal government.
I think it's important to realize that there's two very important aspects. One of them is to have the Seneca Nation, what's referred to as the Seneca Nation government, allow the people to have an input into our people, what we're going to be doing. But the other aspect is that the people have to participate in order to be able to have a say in the government.
There's a responsibility.
Yes.
Well, it's not that people be allowed. The fact is that the people have to start asserting their sovereignty.
Yes.
They're the sovereign here, not the Seneca Nation. Seneca Nation is just a corporation.
Right.
And so it's the people, and the people in the land go together, and the people have to start asserting their sovereignty and not be holding their hands behind their back and saying, Mr. President, can I,
may I,
you know, may I, you know, that's nonsense. The thing is that the people have to start taking control. And I mean, earlier I was listening to what John was having to say about how they come in invading our territories. The thing is that our people have been involved in the tobacco trade now for over 30 years. And
we can go a lot farther back than that if we want to talk before cigarettes. Sure. Yeah,
well, we'll talk about cigarettes and that. But the thing is that under their system and how they've had to deal with our people, even they know that this would not be categorized as a violent crime. And but yet they come in with masks on, with machine guns, dressed in black, coming into people's houses first thing in the morning, like they were making a big drug raid, or they were coming in after
saving somebody's life or something.
Maybe they were after some serial killers. You know, I mean, they're just pushing to criminalize our people, and yet there is nothing criminal about what our people are doing. This has been our right before they ever landed here, whether they're Vikings or Columbus. I don't care. Our people, we were doing this all this time. Now, why we as a people don't have the right according to their laws? And that, you know, there was just a case that's on Monday up in Toronto. There was Mohawks who took a case before the higher courts up there, and they were suing because the royal proclamation between Great Britain and our people was not being respected. And the judge himself admitted that that this royal proclamation, it is the supreme law, because it's a two roll, and that the Queen or the Crown had agreed that they would always honor and recognize and respect the two roll, and this royal proclamation that they passed, there's only one other royal proclamation, and that's with Israel, and yet they're honoring the proclamation with Israel, but yet our arrangement and agreement and the proclamation comes way before Israel's, but yet they're honoring that one, and the judge says, yes, you're right in what you're saying, but we're not going to recognize it. And don't try to appeal this case. So the Mohawk.
Well, so they said they were right, but they're still not going to recognize it.
They said they're still not going to honor it. They're not going to honor it.
They recognize it, but they're not going to honor it.
That's right. And so Tahuge, who was the one who brought it before him, he says, remember and be careful about the decision you make, because you could be committing treason. Because the judge and everybody else under the Crown is supposedly representing the Queen. And so I advise the people, go after every one of these people and lodge a complaint with the Crown. And don't charge the Crown, because it's not the Queen that's doing it, but her agents.
Right.
And go after her agents, because they're the ones in violation. But remember that the United States has that very same agreement, that they accepted the two roll. And their symbol is that gold braid that they wear on their uniforms and on their flags and so on. And if they didn't recognize and recognize this, then why is that gold braid and that still on their uniforms and on their flag?
Well, one of the things
those are the symbols.
One of the things that I keep, I guess I've got a renewed sense of its value is the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and the reason I bring this up is because since most of this stuff that they is clear within their own laws, they can't hide from it when it comes to international law. And the point is, yeah, this UN Declaration does not really have the force of law necessarily yet, but it does. But we can give it force. And every time we show the flaws in their adjudication of a case, or when they try to pass a law and they try to shove it down our throats, we can point to the various articles. And this is something we need to start giving this document more force until such a time that we do cite enough examples that we force the international community to say, look, we signed this declaration. What are we going to do about it? And I think we've got to do that.
But the thing is that there was no need for the United Nations to get together and to create a whole new law. The fact of the matter is that they should have just respected the existing ones.
Well, and there's no question about that. But the fact that again, enough people said, look, specifically, indigenous people are still being railroaded. The fact that it even needed that it kind of shows you how poorly the rest of the international community has accepted us as people by the same definition as everybody else.
Back in the 1940s, they passed a declaration that they would not allow any longer for people, children especially, to be starving around the world. But yet, since they passed that declaration, it's even worse than at the time they passed.
Yeah, but the rich people have gotten a lot wealthier.
Oh yeah, of course.
All right, we got to take a break. we're going every one of our marks here. But anyway, again, got a full studio here. I've got Ross, Ed, Matt, and Paul, and this is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. We'll be right back. All right, thanks for coming back again. I got a full studio here. One of the areas that we were almost getting to was we talked about how aggressive the federal government has been during this administration. And when we say this administration, I'm not sure whether I should call it the Barack Obama administration or the Rob Porter administration, because there are certain policies that Rob brought to bear even before he was the president of Seneca Nation, as a policy advisor, as a legal counsel. And again, I hate to give Rob credit or blame, but the reality is there are certain things, and again, I wrote about this on my Facebook page about these well-educated guys, and Ross, you've talked about these guys who get an education. The white man does things, and then they say, "Oh, I've got the great idea. This is how we're going to fix things on our territory." And only, frankly, only a white man could be arrogant enough to think that they could pass laws and build all these institutions to prevent any problem from ever existing. And they do it with that intent, knowing full well that they're never going to avert the problems. I mean, we know nothing in nature exists without there being some conflict. I mean, everything going back to our creation story talks about that conflict. So we know that conflict exists. The question is, how do you deal with that conflict? And if you think you're just going to pass, some body of laws that's failed in every other society, American society. Look at the legal system of the United States, the judicial system of the United States. Look at the political system of the United States and what a debacle it is. And yet, this is one of the things that not just Rob, but now he's convinced a certain number of counselors and to buy into this thing. And to me, one of the biggest ironies of this is, and we hear this all the time. You'll hear a certain tone by some individuals who are so resentful of the business community. They'll talk about the greedy Seneca business people, and I've even heard people post things like, "Oh, we shouldn't even have private sector shouldn't be able to have stores. Only the nation should have a store." The irony of that is, do they feel the same way about the United States? That the United States should have no free enterprise? That you shouldn't go to Walmart. You should go to the USA department store. That the United States should be just socialistic. So they embrace the free enterprise of the United States, but they don't want it on their own territory. I mean, because what they're asking for is not just socialism. It's more than that. It's authoritarian rule.
It comes at all levels too. It comes with what we'll call the educated and the Senecas that are less educated. Everybody seems to fall into that, or a lot of people seem to fall into it. But what we need to start asking our people that are going out to school, I'm all for higher education, but I want people to go out there to understand that they're also supposed to go out there to observe what's not working, what's wrong, and don't bring it back. In other words, I don't want to bring back the institutions that they're pitching because they don't work for them.
We should know them.
Sure.
And
you have to know them. You have to.
We should learn about them, not learn to be them.
Yeah. So, and that's it. So, don't bring it back. What I'm more interested in the educational spheres, whether it's college or any kind of higher learning, is that learn how to think. Learn how to think. Don't learn just about that box that they're trying to put you in and have put their people in and see how they're all struggling to find their identities and just bring those problems to our territory.
Well, and one of the problems even with higher education and for our people is if they don't have that foundation of who we are, our education, then as they're learning what the rest of the world has tried to accomplish with their institutions and with their regulations and with their laws, if they understood a little bit more who we were, they would understand the value of what would be a Seneca solution to that same problem.
Exactly.
And because they don't have that foundation, they don't that whole relationship with creation and that whole relationship with our children and the future generations and all that stuff that a lot of people treat as these trite expressions. If they don't understand that, then how can they look at the flaws of their system and then bolster something that would be either that we already had or something that can be based on something we already had instead of always following their model. Go ahead, Ed.
I ran to get on a ticket to run for council, and I didn't make it, but I was told by someone who was involved with the political system that so many people in the Seneca Nation referred to me as being idealistic. And I thought about that for a while because my response to that is simply that you go and talk to the people, doesn't matter whether they're in government or just on a territory or whatever. They believe that we're supposed to take care of the unborn children. They agree that we're supposed to take care of the elders. They agree that we're supposed to watch over our territory. All of those things they agree to. And when they say that, my thought is, okay, who's being idealistic here? If you believe you can take care of those things without learning our ways, without learning our history, culture, without learning the language,
Or
then-
following a system that fails on all those
and
things.
literally participating in doing so, then who's being idealistic? You think that's just going to happen? And that's why my point is that what I said before is that sovereignty doesn't refer to rights. Sovereignty is referring to responsibilities. And one of our responsibilities is to teach our people how to be, what it means to be
But another responsibility is to learn,
learning.
to be willing to learn.
Not only learn, but learn how to learn. Okay, there's the education.
Well, and again, Paul, if our concept of sovereignty is geared more towards carrying ourselves, then that's a responsibility. I mean, carrying yourself isn't just having somebody stand you up so you can lean one way and let your feet
that's
follow.
exactly what it means, is being responsible. That's why when I mentioned another time is that when we refer to our children, we don't say my son and my daughter. We say riyan, kayan, and that it means that you're protecting their birthright. You're protecting their birthright so that when they become of age, and that not meaning by years, but by their knowledge and what they demonstrate, then they can take full responsibility for themselves. But in the meantime, you're responsible for them because they're not your property. They're your responsibility. You brought them into this world, therefore you take the responsibility to care for them and help them and give them everything, fully equip them so that when they are of that age to make their own decisions, then they have the tools in which to do it with. And you mentioned about education. You know, it's kind of sick to keep hearing this word, education. And now, what do we mean by education? It's assimilation. We feel that the higher someone goes in school, that he's going to become more intelligent, which isn't true. I know a lot of people who went to college and university and is as dumb as a box of rocks today, you know. And I know a lot of people who never went to school, but you know something? They have what they call common sense, you know, and they're more realistic about things, you know. People who go to school and everything. I'm not saying don't go to school. I'm saying learn everything you possibly can. But like you said earlier, you should have a background at least of who you are. You need to have a foundation of who you are before you go out there. I mean, there's this story about Chief Seattle sending 10 young men off to the white man's school, and then the white man sent 10 of his. And when they came back, he says, you sent us 10 boys, we sent you 10 men. We sent you 10 boys, and you sent us back 10 people who can't do anything. You sent us back useless. You gave us broken people. And this is what we have today in our territory. We have a hell of a lot of broken people because we don't know who we are, and we don't even know who those people around us are. So what do we know?
Well, and again, I'm in what I would call somewhat of a defense for higher education, what they call higher education. What I would say the value of it is to learn how not to be assimilated. But you have to understand what that system is to almost to avoid it. So if you go into pursuing a college degree with that in mind, that you're going to make sure you carry who you are with you, and that you're only becoming more aware of what their systems are about, then there's justification. But if all you're going to do is go there and become more and more indoctrinated into their system, then when you come back, you are useless to us. Look, it's 1:45. We got to take another break, and we'll finish up the first hour in this next segment. All right, this is John Kane and company, and we'll be back. All right, thanks for coming back. This is John Kane, and I've got Paul Delarone, Matt Hill, Ed Schindler, and Ross Johnson this program. So hopefully at some point we'll be able to put this up on YouTube so people can see just how angry we look when we're on the radio. No, we actually laugh, and we laugh at each other. We actually laugh at how angry we get when we're on the radio. But no, we were talking about, again, trying to, I guess for our own edification, define what we mean when we say education. Because the last thing any of us want to do is piss off Paul Delarone when we're saying some of this stuff. So, again, it's one of the things that I say all the time is that knowledge is not taught. what a teacher really does is they prepare a person to receive knowledge, because knowledge is something that has to be received. It is not something you can't give somebody else your experiences. And knowledge, beliefs are what you're told. Knowledge is what you experience. So the thing is, when you start being so consumed by what people tell you to believe, and I tell you, this can come from from religion, it can come from college, it can come from high school, it can come from all kinds of places. When you are consumed with believing, or with the sense that beliefs are your embody all of your knowledge, then what you've done is you fail to experience it. You fail to put what people have prepared for you by trying to tell you these things to receive the knowledge itself. Knowledge is something that you can only experience yourself, and until you actually take something practical that you've dissected, as you talk about, Paul. When somebody tells you something and you dissect that information, and so you become more able to understand and fully question what people are presenting to you. That's when you will experience something to say, all right, now I understand. Now that has become part of my knowledge, because it's entered my worldview. And for those guys who go into go to Harvard, or they go to Princeton, or they go to Dartmouth, and then they come back to our territories, full of themselves with what they think is knowledge, because they were taught this at these prestigious universities, and all of a sudden they realize that they've never applied that to who we are, and then they start trying to implement it. And the problem is when some of our people get so consumed by the glitz of in the case of the Seneca Nation, with a Harvard-educated president. I mean, I've literally heard people say this is the first time that the Seneca Nation has ever had an educated president. I've literally heard people say it. So what did they think existed, for 10,000 years? That there was never any Seneca leadership or any Seneca people that ever had, that had any intelligence? Because I mean, to tell you, when I look at that, so much of what has been attempted in the last 2 to 4 years, and I look at what has transpired with the relationship that the Seneca Nation, the cozy relationship they've had with the ATF, and the cozy relationship they have with politicians, and through their lobbyists and through their campaign contributions, it begs the question: when these people get elected into these positions, who do they become? Who do they resemble more? Do they resemble us, or do they resemble us, or them? Do they resemble like that final page of Animal Farm? When all the animals are looking in the window and they see the pigs and the men fighting over a card game, and it gets to the point where you can't separate the pigs from the men. And the pigs are the good guys, by the way.
In 1990, I got charged by the state of New York. And the only reason I got charged by the state, and I didn't get charged by the feds, was because the states jumped the gun and charged me before the feds could. And the charge was that I obstructed justice. I don't know how many of you remember, back in 1990, a helicopter landed in the territory of Cañaque. And it was apparent that somebody had shot this helicopter. And so it landed on the territory, right by the main road that passes through the territory. And I was asked to go and see what the problem was and what we could do to help and so on. And so I went over there, and a lot of these troopers, majors, lieutenants, sergeants, captains, they all knew me because of our past relations. And so they asked me, they said, will you allow us to go into the territory and do an investigation? And they all know that no one goes into the territory unless you've been granted permission. So I told them, I said, well, I don't have the authority to give you permission to go into the territory. That is a decision that must come from the people of the territory. And it says, if you have a request, I can bring your request to the people, but I cannot say yes or no to you. I made it very clear that had to come from the people. I was the only one who was charged and convicted in that helicopter situation. And I mean, this is how stupid it is. I told the truth. I told that I did not have the authority because I am not the ruler of anybody's community or anybody's territory.
So you were basically arrested for not having the authority.
That's right. You know, and the state arrested me, and they weren't asking as much as the federal government. Federal government wanted me to do 15 years and pay them $150,000 in fines and stuff like this. In the end, the state just settled for giving me a misdemeanor and charging me with hampering an investigation.
Hampering.
Yeah, so I hampered them, you know.
I've never heard you referred to as a hamperer before.
Yeah, I'm a hamperer.
But anyway, see, that's the irony of because at the end of the day, it was important to them to get a conviction.
Yes.
They just needed to charge somebody.
Yeah.
And when you look at what's happened with our economic development in our territories, the effort is to criminalize.
That's right.
And then whatever they've got to do to come up with something that they can make stick. I mean, you look at 100 agents going into Tonawanda back in February, and they didn't charge anybody. The only person they charged was one of the non-native clerks that worked at one of the shops, and then they had to dismiss it because the undercover BIA agent who was doing the controlled buys didn't show up for the hearing, so they had to dismiss the charge against her. So, and they realized that this thing was not playing out very well politically. And now with the circumstance in Cattaraugus, and I can't emphasize enough how much we need to make noise over this, because it's going to happen again. I mean, I was one of the people who had a conversation. Matt, you were there. Ed, you were there. Mm-hmm. with Steve Dickey. We know how cocky this guy is. We know how arrogant he is, and he's gone all over. He doesn't necessarily do too much in Mohawk territory. He usually gets around Mohawk territory, but he basically asserted, that there was no question that he was going to continue on his path, and that he was going to make arrests, especially as it related to rollies and to what they're deeming contraband. And again, what I'm saying is, there is nothing on our territories that, by their definition, would not fit their definition of contraband. And it's not right. It's not legal. We've been, and in fact, again, I can't say it enough. We've been purchasing this product from New York State wholesalers. We've been clearing some of this product from foreign trade zones through U.S. Customs. There's no question that we've been taking this product, legally taking this product onto our territories. And now they change a law that never mentions us, that we're never a part of it, so they can reinterpret something, so they can, and it doesn't even matter that whether they get some real high profile conviction. The point is they want to get convictions, and they're going to criminalize us because they know they can kind of break us with legal fees and everything else. And that's why I say over and over again, the solution to the conflicts that we have with the federal government, with the state government, are not legal solutions. They are not legal problems. They're political problems. And we need to address this stuff politically. So meeting with Steve Dickey, or meeting with a TTB agent, or meeting with somebody on the low end of this thing serves us no good whatsoever. Right. We've got to make noise at the highest level.
Or a tax commissioner.
Well, exactly. All right, well, we killed a perfectly good hour, and we'll see what we do with the second one here. I know that we've got a lot more to discuss, because don't forget, tomorrow's Christopher Columbus Day. All right, we'll be back for the second hour after this. Thanks, guys.